Hi guys, before we start chapter 7, let's read section 3, Everyday Life, Culture and Politics. Section 3 will introduce you to the history of everyday life. In this section, you will read about the history of sports and clothing. History is not just about the dramatic events in the world, it is equally about the small things in our lives. Everything around us has a history. The clothes we wear, the food we eat, the music we hear, the medicines we use, the literature we read, the games we play. All these have evolved over time. Since we relate to them in our daily lives, their history escapes us. We never pause to think what things were like a century ago or how people in different societies see these everyday things, food and clothing, for instance, differently. Chapter 7 is on history and sports. You will study this history through the story of one game that in India has captured the imagination of the nation for some decades. News of cricket today hits the headline of newspapers. Cricket matches are organized to establish friendship between nations, and cricketers are seen as ambassadors of the country. The game has in fact come to represent the unity of India. But did you know that this was not always so? This chapter will tell you about the long and checkered history of the game. At one time, a century and a half ago, cricket was an English game. It had been invented in English and became intimately linked to the culture of 19th century Victorian society. The game was expected to represent all that the English valued: fair play, discipline, gentlemanliness. So the game was expected to represent all that the English valued: fair play, discipline, gentlemanliness. It was introduced in schools as part of a wider program of physical training through which boys were to be molded into ideal citizens. Girls were not to play games meant for boys. With the British, cricket spread to the colonies. There again, it was supposed to uphold the values of Englishness. The colonial masters assumed that only they could play the game as it ought to be played in its true spirit. They were in fact worried when the inhabitants of the colonies not only began to play the game but often played it better than the masters, and at times beat the English at their own game. The game of cricket thus got linked up closely with the politics of colonialism and nationalism. Within the colonies, the game had a complex history. As chapter 7 will show, it was connected to the politics of caste and reason, community and nation. The emergence of cricket as a national game was the result of many decades of historical development. From cricket, you will move to clothing in chapter 8. You will see how a history of clothing can tell us so much about the history of societies. The clothes people wear are shaped by the rules and norms of societies. They reflect people's sense of beauty and honor, their notions of proper conduct and behavior. As societies change, these norms alter, But these changes in the norms of society and styles of clothing come about as a consequence of long years of struggle. They have a history. They do not just happen naturally. Chapter 8 will introduce you to this history. It will show how the shifts in clothing in English and India were shaped by the social movements within these societies and by changes within the economy. You will see how clothing too is deeply connected to the politics of colonialism and nationalism. So you will see how clothing too is deeply connected to the politics of colonialism and nationalism, caste and class. A look at the history of clothing helps us discover new layers of meaning in the politics of Swadeshi and the symbol of the charkha. It even helps us understand Mahatma Gandhi better, for he was one individual who was highly sensitive to the politics of clothing and wrote extensively on it. Once you see the history behind one or two such issues, you may begin to ask historical questions about other such aspects of ordinary life which you have taken for granted. Now let's start chapter 7, History and Sport, the story of cricket. We have a figure 1, the oldest cricket bat in existence, not the curved end similar to a hockey stick. Cricket grew out of the many stick and ball games played in England 500 years ago under a variety of different rules. The word bat is an Old English word. So the word bat is an Old English word that simply means stick or club. By the 17th century, cricket had evolved enough to be recognized as a distinct game. By the 17th century, cricket had evolved enough to be recognizable as a distinct game, and it was popular enough for its fans to be fined for playing it on Sunday instead of going to church. Till the middle of the 18th century, bats were roughly the same shape as hockey bats. Okay, as hockey sticks. So, till the middle of the 18th century, bats were roughly the same shape as hockey sticks, curving outward at the bottom. There was a simple reason for this. The ball was bowled underarmed along the ground, and the curve at the end of the bat gave the batsman the best chance of making contact. How that early version of cricket played in village England grew into the modern game played in giant stadiums in great cities is a proper subject for history, because one of the uses of history is to understand how the present was made. And sport is a large part of contemporary life. It is one way in which we amuse ourselves, compete with each other, stay fit, and express our social loyalties. If tens of millions of Indians today dropped everything to watch the Indian team play a test match or a one-day international, it is reasonable for a history of India to explore how that stick and ball game invented in southeastern England. So, how that stick and ball game invented in southeastern England became the ruling passion of the Indian subcontinent. This is particularly so since the game was linked to the wider history of colonialism and nationalism and was in part shaped by the politics of religion and caste. Our history of cricket will look first at the evolution of cricket as a game in England and discuss the wider culture of physical training and athleticism. Okay, and discuss the wider culture of physical training and athleticism of the time. It will then move to India, discuss the history of the adoption of cricket in this country, and trace the modern transformation of the game. In each of these sections, we will see how the history of the game was connected to the social history of the time. Figure 2, and artist sketch of the cricket ground at Lord's in England in 1821. The historical development of cricket as a game in England. The social and economic history of England in the 18th and 19th centuries. Cricket's early years shaped the game and gave cricket its unique nature. For example, one of the peculiarities of Test cricket is that a match can go on for 5 days and still end in a draw. No other modern team sport takes even half as much time to complete. A football match is generally over in an hour and a half of playing time. Even baseball, a long drawn out bat and ball game by the standards of modern sport, completes 9 innings in less than half the time that it takes to play a limited overs match, the shortened version of modern cricket. Another curious characteristics of cricket is that the length of the pitch is specific. So the length of the pitch is specific, 22 yards, but the size or shape of the ground is not. Most other team sports such as hockey and football lay down the dimensions of the playing area. Cricket does not. Grounds can be oval, like the Adelaide Oval, or nearly circular, like Chepauk in Chennai. A six at the Melbourne Cricket Ground needs to clear much more ground than a lofted shot for the same reward at Firoz Kotla in Delhi. So the size of the field is different. It doesn't have a fixed dimension. There's a historical reason behind both these oddities. Cricket was the earliest modern team sport to be codified, which is another way of saying that cricket gave itself rules and regulations so that it could be played in a uniform and standardized way, well before team games like soccer and hockey. The first written laws of cricket were the first written laws of cricket were drawn up in 1744. They stated they stated the principals shall choose from amongst the gentlemen present 2 umpires who shall absolutely decide all disputes. The stumps must be 22 inches high and the bail across them 6 inches. The bowl must be between 5 and 6 ounces and the 2 sets of stumps 22 yards apart. There were no limits on the shape or size of the bat. It appears that 40 notches or runs was viewed as a very big score, probably due to the bowlers bowling quickly at shins unprotected by pads. The world's first cricket club was formed in Hambledon in the 1760s, and the Marylebone Cricket Club MCC was founded in 1787. In 1788, the MCC published its first revision. Okay. In 1788, the MCC published its first revision of the laws and became the guardian of cricket's regulations. Here's a figure 3, the pavilion of the Marylebone Cricket Club, MCC, in 1874. And here's another figure. Figure 4. The laws of cricket, drawn up and revised by the MCC, were regularly published in this form. Note that norms of batting were also formalized. The MCC's revision of the laws brought in a series of changes in the game that occurred in the second half of the 18th century. During the 1760s and 1770s, it became common to pitch the ball through the air rather than roll it along the ground. So there was a change. During the 1760s and 1770s, it became common to pitch the ball through the air rather than roll it along the ground. This change gave bowlers the options of length, deception through the air, plus increased pace. It also opened new possibilities for spin and swing. In response, batsmen had to master timing and shot selection. One immediate result was the replacement of the curved bat with the straight one. All of this raised the premium on skill and reduced the influence of rough ground and brute force. The weight of the ball was limited to between 5.5 to 5 by 3 by 4 ounces. And the width of the bat to 4 inches. And so the width of the bat to 4 inches. The later ruling followed an innings by a batsman who appeared with a bat as wide as the wicket. In 1774, the first leg before law was published. Also around this time, a third stump became common. By 1780, 3 days had become the length of a major match, and this year also saw the creation of the first 6-seam cricket ball. While many important changes occurred during the 19th century, the rule about white balls was applied. The exact circumference of the ball was specified. Protection equipment like pads and gloves became available. Boundaries were introduced where previously all shots had to be run, and most importantly, overarm bowling became legal. Cricket remained a pre-industrial sport that matured during the early phase of the Industrial Revolution, the late 18th century. This history has made cricket a game with characteristics of both the past and the present day. Cricket's connection with a rural past can be seen in the length of a test match. Originally, cricket matches had no time limit. The game went on for as long as it took to bowl out a side twice. The rhythms of village life were slower, and cricket's rules were made before the Industrial Revolution. Modern factory work meant that people were paid by the hour or the day or the week. Games that were codified after the Industrial Revolution, like football and hockey, were strictly time limited to fit the routines of industrial city life. In the same way, cricket's vagueness about the size of a cricket ground is a result of its village origins. Cricket was originally played on country commons, unfenced land that was public property. So here's a new word, codified, made into a formalized system with clearly established rules and laws. Here's a figure 5. This poster announces a match at Lord's in 1848. It shows the difference between the amateurs and the professionals by calling the two sides the gentlemen and the players. Advertisements for 19th century matches looked like theater posters, suggesting the dramatic nature of the game. The size of the commons varied from one village to another, so there were no designated boundaries or boundary hits. When the ball went into the crowd cleared a way for the fieldsman to retrieve it. Even after boundaries were written into the laws of cricket, their distance from the wicket was not specified. The laws simply lay down that the umpire shall agree with both captains on the boundaries of the playing area. If you look at the game's equipment, you can see how cricket both changed with changing times and yet fundamentally remained true to its origins in rural England. Cricket's most important tools are all made of nature or are all made of natural pre-industrial materials. The bat is made of wood, as are the stumps and the bails. The ball is made with leather, twine, and cork. So the ball is made with leather, twine, and cork. Even today, both bat and ball are man made, not industrially manufactured. The material of the bat changed slightly over time. Once it was cut out of a single piece of wood. Now it consists of two pieces, the blade which is made out of the wood of the willow tree and the handle which is made out of cane that became available as European colonialists and trading companies established themselves in Asia. Unlike golf and tennis, cricket has refused to remake its tools with industrial or man-made materials like plastic, fiberglass and metal have been firmly rejected. Australian cricketer Dennis Lillee tried to play an innings with an aluminium bat only to have it outlawed by the umpires. But in the matter of protective equipment, cricket has been influenced by technological change. The invention of vulcanized rubber. So, the invention of vulcanized rubber led to the introduction of pads in 1848 and protective gloves soon afterwards. And the modern game would be unimaginable without helmets made out of metal and synthetic lightweight materials. So, the invention of vulcanized rubber led to the introduction of pads in 1848 and protection gloves soon afterwards. And a modern game would be unimaginable without helmets made out of metal and synthetic lightweight materials. Here's a figure 6. The legendary batsman W.C. Grace coming out to bat at Lord's in 1895. He was playing for the gentlemen against the players. So 1.1 Cricket and Victorian England. The organization of cricket in England reflected the nature of English society. The rich who could afford to play it for pleasure were called amateurs. So they were called amateurs, and the poor who played it for a living were called professionals. The rich were amateurs for two reasons. One, they considered sport a kind of leisure. To play for the pleasure of playing and not for money was an aristocratic value. Two, there was not enough money in the game for the rich to be interested. The wages of professionals were paid by patronage or subscription or gate money. The game was seasonal and did not offer employment the year round. Most professionals worked as miners or in other forms of working class employment in the winter, the season off. Here are some new words. Patronage, agreement by wealthy supporter to give financial support for a specific cause. Subscription, collected financial contribution for a specific purpose, such as cricket. The social superiority of amateurs was built into the customs of cricket. Amateurs were called gentlemen, while professionals had to be content with being described as players. They even entered the ground from different entrances. Amateurs tended to be batsmen, leaving the energetic, hard-working aspects of the game, like fast bowling, to the professionals. That is partly why the laws of the game always give the benefits of the doubt to the batsman. We have here a source A. Thomas Hughes, 1822 to 1896, studied at Rugby School during the headmastership of Thomas Arnold. Based on his school experience, he wrote a novel, Tom Brown's School Days. The book, published in 1857, became popular and helped spread the ideas of what came to be called muscular Christianity, that believed that healthy citizens had to be molded through Christian ideals and sports. In this book, Tom Brown is transformed from a nervous, homesick, timid boy into a robust, manly student. He becomes a heroic figure recognized for his physical courage, sportsmanship, loyalty, and patriotism. This transformation is brought about by the discipline of the public school and the culture of sports. Extract. Come, none of your irony, Brown. Answers the master. I am beginning to understand the game scientifically. What a noble game it is, too. Isn't it? But it's more than a game, it's an institution, said Tom. Yes, said Arthur. The birthright of British boys, old and young as habeas corpus and tried by jury, are of British men. The discipline and reliance on one another which it teaches is so valuable, I think, went on the master. It ought to be such an unselfish game. It merges the individual in the 11. He does not pay that he may win, but that has side may, but that his side may. That's very true, said Tom, and that's why cricket and football, no, now one comes to think of it, are such much better games than fives, or bear and hounds, or any others where the object is to come in first or to win for oneself and not that one's side may win. And then the captain of the 11, said the master. What a post is his in our school world, requiring skill and gentleness and firmness, and I know not what other rare qualities. That is partly why the laws of the game always give the benefit of the doubt to the batsman. Cricket is a batsman's game. So cricket is a batsman's game because its rules were made to favor gentlemen who did most of the batting. The social superiority of the amateur was also the reason the captain of a cricket team was traditionally a batsman, not because batsmen were naturally better captains, but because they were generally gentlemen. Captains of teams, whether club teams or national sides, were always amateurs. It was not till the 1830s that the English Test team was led by a professional, the Yorkshire batsman Len Hutton. It's often said that the Battle of Waterloo was won on the playing fields of Eton. This means that Britain's military success was based on the values taught to young boys or schoolboys, taught to schoolboys in its public schools. Eton was the most famous of these schools. The English boarding school was the institution that trained English boys for careers in the military, the civil service, and the church. The three great. So, the military, the civil service, and the church. The three great institutions of Imperial England. By the beginning of the 19th century, men like Thomas Arnold, headmaster of the famous rugby school and founder of the modern public school system, saw team sport like cricket and rugby not just as outdoor play but as an organized way of teaching. English boys, the discipline. Uh, it was used as an organized way of teaching English boys the discipline, the importance of hierarchy, the skills, the codes of honor, and the leadership qualities that helped them build and run the British Empire. Victorian Empire builders justified the conquest of other countries as an act of unselfish social service by which backward peoples were introduced to the civilizing influence of British law and Western knowledge. Cricket helped to confirm this self image of the English elite by glorifying the amateur ideals where cricket was played not for victory or profit, but for its own sake in the spirit of fair play. In actual fact, the Napoleonic Wars were won because of the economic contribution of the iron works of Scotland and Wales, the mills of Lancashire, and the financial houses of the city of London. It was the English lead in trade and industry that made Britain the world's greatest power, but it suited the English ruling class to believe that it was the superior character of its young men, built in boarding schools, playing gentlemanly games like cricket that tipped the balance. Here's a figure. We have a figure here. Figure 7. A cricket match at Lord's between the famous public schools Eton and Harrow. While the game itself would look similar wherever it is played, the crowd does not. Notice how the upper class social character of the game is brought out by the focus on gentlemen in bowler hats and ladies with their parasols, shading them from the sun. Here's a new word, hierarchy, organized by rank and status. Here's a figure. Figure 8. Croquet, not cricket for women. Sports for women was not designed as vigorous competitive exercise. Croquet was a slow-paced, elegant game considered suitable for women, especially of the upper class. The players' flowing gowns, frills, and hats show the character of women's sports. Source B. Sport for girls. Till the last part of the 19th century, sports and vigorous exercise for girls was not a part of their education. Dorothea Bale, principal of Cheltenham Ladies' College from 1858 to 1906, reported to the Schools Enquiry Commission in 1864. The vigorous exercise which boys get from cricket, etc., must be supplied in the case of girls by walking and skipping. By the 1890s, school began acquiring playgrounds and allowing girls to play some of the games earlier considered male preserves, but the competition was still discouraged. Dorothea Bale told the school council in 1893 to 1894, "I am most anxious that girls should not ever exert themselves or become absorbed in athletic rivalries, and therefore we do not play against the other schools. I think it is better for girls to learn to take an interest in botany, geology, etc., and not make country excursions." So that's all. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.